And we're a very open family, so we talk about things that bother us and things that trouble us. But you never quite know the knock-on effects it can have.
The palace staff knew something was terribly wrong the moment they heard it. It came from behind closed doors, a sound that none of them had ever heard before. Prince William was crying, real, deep, broken sobs that seemed to tear right through the walls themselves. What could possibly break a man who had buried his mother with dry eyes at 15? What could shatter a prince trained from birth to never show weakness? Hours earlier, Catherine had locked the sitting room door, insisting that only family be present, and no one else was allowed. When the children finally emerged, their faces were pale, their eyes wide with shock. What had their mother told them in that room? A medical emergency? A royal scandal? A threat to the crown? But when the truth finally came out, it was something nobody could have predicted. Something so shocking that every other royal crisis suddenly seemed small and insignificant. Something that would change their lives forever. The announcement Catherine made that day contained a secret so explosive, so intensely personal, that once you hear it, you will understand why William cried as if his world were ending. Because in many ways, it really was. Stay with us. The strange behaviour had started months ago. Something had shifted in Princess Kate, though pinpointing exactly when proved impossible. William replayed conversations in his mind, searching for the moment things had changed. But the transformation had been gradual, almost invisible, until suddenly it was undeniable. She began declining invitations she would normally accept, citing exhaustion or scheduling conflicts that never quite added up, stripping away the warmth that had always been her signature. Even public appearances seemed forced. Her smiles were practiced rather than natural. The palace staff noticed too, whispering in corners, speculating about how distracted she seemed. Present in body, but elsewhere in mind. The first concrete sign of trouble came during a family dinner when Catherine abruptly excused herself, claiming a headache. William followed her upstairs minutes later, finding her sitting on the bathroom floor, phone clutched in her hand, tears streaming down her face. She quickly wiped her eyes when she heard him approach, straightening her posture, rebuilding the walls he had just glimpsed behind. When he asked what was wrong, she insisted it was nothing, just stress from their packed schedule. He wanted to push harder, demand honesty, but something in her expression stopped him. She wasn't ready to talk. Forcing the issue would only make her retreat further. Later, George confided in his father, mentioning that Mum had been acting weird. She had picked him up from school 3 times that week, instead of sending the usual protection officers, a rare, unplanned gesture. During the drives home, she asked him strange questions. Questions about his dreams for the future, what he valued most in life, even whether he wished their family were normal, whatever normal meant. George found the conversations unsettling, not because they were inappropriate, but because his mother seemed desperate for his answers, as if his words carried meaning far beyond casual curiosity. Charlotte, too, noticed her mother crying one afternoon in the garden, hidden behind the rose bushes where she thought no one could see. Charlotte didn't interrupt, sensing this was private grief, not meant to be shared, but the image haunted her. The woman who had always seemed strongest, who carried everything with grace and determination, was broken. Seeing her like that terrified Charlotte in ways she couldn't articulate. She mentioned it to William cautiously, unsure if she was betraying a confidence. William thanked her gently, his concern deepening into something closer to dread. Palace staff reported other oddities. Princess Kate had requested access to the royal archives, normally reserved only for historians. She spent hours reading through old documents. When asked about her sudden interest in family history, she claimed she was preparing material for a future project about royal heritage. The explanation seemed plausible, yet incomplete. William confronted her one evening after the children were asleep. He had reached his breaking point, unable to ignore the mounting evidence that something serious was happening. "Catherine, please," he said, voice tight. "Whatever this is, we face it together. You don't have to carry this alone." She looked at him with eyes full of pain and something else he could not identify. Fear, perhaps, or guilt. "I know," she whispered. "I promise I will tell you everything soon. But right now, I need you to trust me. I need you to believe that what I am doing is necessary, even if it doesn't make sense." Yet her words offered no comfort. They only deepened the mystery, consuming their lives. Sleep became difficult for William. He lay awake at night, mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Was she ill? The thought terrified him beyond measure. Was someone threatening her? Blackmail was not uncommon in their position. Had she discovered some secret about the family, something that could change everything she thought she knew? Every possibility seemed more frightening than the last. He considered hiring private investigators but dismissed the idea immediately. That would betray her trust and violate their marriage in ways he could never justify. So he waited, trapped between respecting her privacy and drowning in anxiety. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. William returned home early from an engagement that finished ahead of schedule. Walking through the front door, he heard Catherine's voice from the study. She was on the phone, urgent and emotional. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this from them. They deserve to know. Every day that passes makes it harder." William froze, unable to move, unwilling to eavesdrop, yet unable to step away. Catherine continued, voice breaking. "I'm terrified of what this will do to them. How do I even begin to explain? How do I tell them their entire lives are about to change?" The person on the other end responded, but William could not hear. He stepped back quietly, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. Whatever secret Catherine had been carrying was about to be revealed the next day. He spent the rest of the day in a fog, going through motions without really being present. He looked at his children during dinner, their innocent faces unaware of the storm approaching, unaware of something big enough to change their entire lives forever. According to Catherine's own words, what could possibly be so significant? His mind spun through possibilities, but kept coming back empty. Nothing made sense. Everything felt wrong that night. Princess Kate went to bed late, climbing in beside William. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, quietly, almost inaudibly, she spoke. William wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but the look on her face stopped him. She was barely holding herself together. Morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Breakfast was prepared. Children ate and laughed, argued about typical sibling nonsense, all unaware of the weight of what was coming. Catherine moved mechanically, her mind clearly elsewhere. William watched carefully, noting how her hands trembled slightly as she poured juice and how she kept glancing at the clock, simultaneously dreading and anticipating what came next. After breakfast, she asked everyone to gather in the sitting room. The children exchanged curious glances but complied, sensing it was not optional. They settled on the couches, the three of them clustered together, William and Catherine facing them. The room felt smaller somehow, the air heavier. Catherine took a deep breath, clasping her hands to stop them from shaking. "Thank you for coming," she began. "I know this seems strange, but I have something important to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Her voice was steady despite the tears forming in her eyes. William leaned forward, every muscle tense, bracing for impact. Without knowing what was coming, Catherine looked at each child individually, memorizing their faces before whatever came next changed them forever. "You know how much your father and I love you, how we would do anything to protect you, to give you the best life possible." The children nodded, confused. George, being the oldest, spoke up. "Mum, you're scaring us. What is this about?" Catherine swallowed hard, gathering courage for words that clearly did not want to come out. "This is about our family, about decisions I made before you were born, decisions that affect all of you in ways I did not fully understand at the time." William's confusion deepened. Decisions before the children were born? What could possibly reach back that far? Catherine continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "When your father and I married, we desperately wanted children, but things did not happen as easily as we hoped. We struggled for a long time. We saw specialists, tried different options, and faced disappointments that nearly broke us." William's mind raced. He remembered those difficult years, the private pain, the endless effort to maintain a calm, public face. But they had survived it all. They had their children. So what was Catherine about to reveal? She took another shaky breath. "We eventually sought help through advanced medical procedures, treatments designed to give us the greatest chance of having the family we dreamed of," she said. The children listened, not fully understanding, but sensing the gravity of what their mother was revealing. Catherine's next words came in a rush, almost as if speaking faster would make them easier to bear. During those treatments, we made choices about genetic selection. Medical decisions I believed were routine, things meant simply to ensure healthy pregnancies. But recently, I learned something that changed everything. William felt ice spreading through his veins. Genetic selection, medical decisions. Where was this going? Catherine looked directly at him now, tears flowing freely. William, the clinic we trusted, the doctors we relied on, they were not entirely honest with us about what they were doing, she explained, voice trembling, that months ago she had discovered through an independent medical investigation that the clinic had been conducting unauthorized genetic modifications, experimental procedures never disclosed to their patients, procedures that had affected the children they had conceived there. The room spun. William heard the words, but could barely process them. Genetic modifications, unauthorized experiments, his children. Catherine rushed on, desperate to get it all out before losing courage. I have been working with lawyers and medical experts to understand exactly what was done and what it means. The modifications were not harmful, she said, though the weight of her words filled the air with tension. In fact, they were designed to enhance certain traits: intelligence, physical health, disease resistance, things that sound positive but raise enormous ethical questions. Questions about consent, about playing God, about what this means for your future, for our children's futures. George stood abruptly, pale, voice sharp with disbelief. What are you saying? That we're not normal? That someone changed us before we were even born? Catherine reached for him, but he stepped back, expression twisting with confusion and anger. You let someone experiment on us, George demanded. Catherine spoke desperately. We did not know. We never would have agreed if we had known. We thought we were doing standard fertility treatments. But the clinic lied to dozens of families. We are victims too. Charlotte started crying, overwhelmed by information too big for her to process, yet understanding it was terrible. Louis looked between his parents and siblings, struggling to grasp why everyone was so upset. Finally, William found his voice, strangled and foreign. How long have you known? How long have you carried this alone? Catherine met his eyes, guilt and anguish written across her face. 3 months. I have known for 3 months. I didn't tell you because I needed to understand it first, know exactly what we were dealing with before bringing it to you. I thought I was protecting everyone, but I see now. I was only protecting myself from facing this nightmare. William's legs felt unsteady. He needed air, space, something to anchor him in a reality that no longer made sense. His children had been genetically modified without his knowledge or consent. Someone had altered their fundamental biology, and the consequences were unpredictable. The violation felt incomprehensible, crushing. He looked at Catherine, seeing her break, and felt his own control shatter. Tears came, unstoppable, raw. He walked out of the room, down the hall, anywhere, but he could not breathe, could not think, could only feel the crushing weight of the truth unraveling before him. An hour later, Catherine found him in their bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed, face buried in his hands, body shaking with sobs that had not stopped since he left the sitting room. She approached slowly, unsure of how he would receive her, knowing she deserved his anger, but hoping for understanding. William, she said softly, please, let me explain everything. He looked up, eyes red and swollen. Explain? How do you explain keeping something like this from me for 3 months? How do you justify making that decision alone? She sat beside him, close enough to touch if he allowed it. You're right. I should have told you immediately, but I was terrified of what it meant, terrified of how you would react, terrified of what it would do to the children. I spent 3 months investigating, trying to understand the full scope, gathering evidence and legal advice. I wanted to come to you with answers, not just problems. William shook his head, voice raw. We are partners, Catherine. We face problems together. You robbed me of that choice. You decided I couldn't handle the truth, that you had to protect me. But who was protecting you while you carried this nightmare alone? His words cracked something open in her. She began crying harder, years of control finally giving way. I am so sorry. I know I was wrong, but I didn't know how to tell you that our beautiful children had been turned into Some kind of experiment. How do you even say those words out loud without destroying everything? William pulled her close, anger dissolving into shared grief. Two people who had faced countless challenges, but nothing prepared them for this horror. After a long moment, William pulled back, wiping his eyes. "Tell me everything," he said. "Every detail. I need to understand what we are dealing with." Catherine nodded, grateful to finally share the burden. She explained how she first learned of the investigation. A journalist had contacted the palace months earlier with a lead about fertility clinics conducting unauthorized procedures. The journalist wanted to inform affected families before publication. Catherine's name appeared on a list of potential victims based on leaked clinic records. At first, she dismissed it as conspiracy nonsense, but the journalist provided documentation that could not be ignored. Medical records showing undisclosed procedures, forged consent forms, scientific papers from the clinic's lead researcher discussing experimental genetic modifications designed to enhance offspring. The timeline matched exactly the period Catherine and William were undergoing treatment. She hired private investigators and medical experts to independently verify the claims. Everything checked out. The clinic had run an illegal program for years, targeting wealthy and influential families. The modifications were sophisticated, affecting multiple genes linked to intelligence, physical health, and longevity. The children born through this program were essentially enhanced versions of what they would have been naturally. Not radically different, but optimized in ways that raised profound ethical questions. William listened, horror growing with each detail. Why? What could they possibly gain? Catherine explained that the lead researcher, Dr. Marcus Holloway, believed he was advancing human evolution. He saw wealthy families as ideal subjects, assuming their children would have the resources to reach their full potential. In his twisted logic, he was doing humanity a favor, creating a generation of superior individuals to lead society. The fact he acted without consent never troubled his conscience. The investigation had uncovered dozens of affected families across multiple countries. Royalty, celebrities, business leaders, politicians, all people with influence, all people whose children were now walking experiments. Some families had begun legal action and criminal charges were pending, but the immediate question remained. What do you tell your children? How do you help them process this? William asked about medical implications. Were the children at risk? Catherine explained that experts believed the modifications were stable, posing no immediate health threats, but long-term effects were unknown. This had never been done before. The children would need ongoing medical monitoring and genetic counselling, especially if they ever had children themselves. The full ramifications extended further than anyone had imagined. George appeared in the doorway, his face hard, guarded and closed off. "Are you finished talking about us like we're science projects?" George's voice cut through the room like fire. William and Catherine jumped, stunned. He had been listening. His young body radiated anger. "Do we get a say in any of this? Or do you just make all the decisions like you've been doing?" he demanded, stepping forward. William reached for him, but George pulled away, defiant. "You let someone change us, change who we are at the most basic level, and now you're crying like victims? But we're the ones who have to live with this. We're the ones who are different." His voice cracked, fierce, yet trembling. Catherine stood and approached slowly, careful not to escalate his fury. "George, you are not different in any way that matters. You are still the boy I gave birth to, the boy I raised and loved every single day of your life. These modifications do not define you. They do not change who you are as a person." George laughed bitterly, a hollow, cynical sound that no child should ever make. "You don't know that. None of us knows what this means. Maybe everything about me is artificial. Maybe I'm not even really your son. Just some designer baby created in a lab." The pain in his voice tore at both parents' hearts. William crossed the room and grabbed George's shoulders firmly, but gently. "Listen to me," he said, voice low but steady. "You are my son. Nothing changes that. Not some doctor's illegal experiment, not genetic modifications. Nothing. You came from your mother and me. You have been loved and wanted since before you were born. Whatever was done to you, it was without our knowledge or permission, but it does not change the fundamental truth. You are ours. and we are yours. George's anger faltered, crumbling into fear and confusion. What if I'm not who I think I am? What if everything I thought I knew about myself is wrong? Catherine joined them, wrapping both William and George in her arms. Then we figure it out, together. We learn who you are, who your brother and sister are, beyond whatever modifications were made. We help you understand you are more than your genetics. You are your choices, your character, your heart. Those things were never modified. Those are purely, authentically you. George finally collapsed into their embrace, allowing himself to be the scared child he really was, not the strong front he had been forcing for months. The family fractures slowly began to heal, though the process would be long and painful. The following days were brutal. Charlotte retreated into herself, barely speaking, spending hours alone in her room. Louis, too young to fully grasp the chaos, sensed the tension and became clingy and anxious. George oscillated between anger and despair, one moment raging against the unfairness of what had been done to them, the next frozen in fear at what it meant for his future. William and Catherine tried to hold the family together while processing their own trauma. The weight was crushing. Palace officials were brought in. This was no longer private. Legal proceedings were looming. Journalists circling like vultures. Crisis management teams were mobilized, lawyers drafted statements, and medical experts were consulted on how to present the revelation publicly. King Charles was informed. His fury was immediate. He demanded meetings, threatened lawsuits, insisted heads must roll for this violation of his family. But beneath the anger, William saw fear. His father was terrified for the grandchildren, unsure how this affected their futures and even the line of succession. Legal scholars scrambled to consider whether genetically modified individuals could inherit the throne. Historical precedents offered no guidance. The situation was unprecedented, leaving everyone in uncharted waters. Queen Camilla took a gentler approach. She visited often, bringing books and games, quietly sitting with Charlotte when words failed, playing with Louis to give moments of normalcy. Her calm presence was a steady anchor amid a storm showing no sign of ending. She privately told Catherine that dwelling on the past would drive everyone mad. The only path forward was supporting the children through this revelation, helping them build identities not defined by circumstances beyond their control. Extended family gatherings became tense, everyone trying to act normal while the elephant in the room grew larger. The children felt the scrutiny, relatives looking at them differently, only deepening the sense that something was wrong. The decision was made to go public sooner rather than later. A carefully worded statement explained that the family had discovered they were victims of unauthorized medical experimentation years ago. It emphasized that authorities were involved and those responsible would face justice. The reaction was explosive. Social media erupted with speculation and conspiracy theories. News outlets ran continuous coverage, bringing on experts to discuss the ethics of genetic modification, the implications for the royal family, and the future of fertility treatments. Public opinion split. Some expressed sympathy, others outrage. Debates raged over whether genetically enhanced royals represented unfair advantage, whether they should inherit titles, and whether a superior class of humans was being created. The noise was deafening. William and Catherine restricted devices, monitored internet access, and created a protective bubble at home, a fragile space where the outside world could not reach them fully. But cracks appeared. Classmates still had access, and information leaked. George returned home one day with a black eye after fighting a boy who called him a lab rat. The school handled it discreetly, but it underscored that normal life would be impossible for the foreseeable future. Therapy became essential. The family entered counseling, both individually and together. A trauma specialist helped process the violation, and therapists worked with the children, helping them understand their feelings and build resilience against judgment. Sessions were exhausting but necessary. Slowly, painfully, they began rebuilding their sense of identity and cohesion. Progress was uneven. Terrible days still followed good ones, but gradually, the worst days became less devastating. Finally, in a family therapy session, George opened up about his deepest fear. He was terrified that his accomplishments were not really his, that anything he achieved would be attributed to artificial enhancements rather than his own effort and ability. How could he ever know if he earned something or if it was just programming? The therapist helped him understand that modifications might have affected potential, but actualization of that potential still required work, choice, and character. Every decision, every effort, every late-night study or training session mattered. Achievements were still his, if he chose to claim them and work for them. A person could have every advantage and still fail if they did not cultivate their gifts. Conversely, modifications did not guarantee success. He was still fully responsible for who he became and what he did with his life. Charlotte's breakthrough came differently. She had been drawing obsessively, dark images, full of pain and confusion, pouring emotions onto paper that she could not yet put into words. One day, she showed her parents a new picture. It depicted their family as superheroes, each member with unique powers standing together against faceless enemies. When asked what it meant, she said simply that maybe being different was not bad. Maybe they could use whatever made them special to help people do good in ways others could not. The simplicity of her insight cut through months of fear and doubt. Her childlike optimism pierced through everyone's darkness, reminding them that perspective was a choice. They could view this as a curse or as an unexpected gift. Neither interpretation was wrong, but one offered more possibilities than the other, finding purpose in pain. Months after the initial announcement, the family found itself in a different place, not healed, because wounds this deep do not heal quickly or completely, but surviving, adapting, and learning to carry what could not be fixed. William threw himself into advocacy work, partnering with organizations pushing for stricter regulations on fertility clinics and genetic research. Princess Kate focused on supporting other affected families, creating a private network where parents could share experiences and resources without media intrusion. She organized meetings where children from different families could connect, reducing isolation and creating a safe environment for understanding and growth. Friendships formed, support systems developed, and a community emerged from shared trauma. The legal case against Dr. Holloway and the clinic moved forward, slowly but steadily. Criminal charges included fraud, assault, and conducting illegal medical experiments. Civil suits from dozens of families sought damages and accountability. Holloway showed no remorse, insisting his work was visionary and that history would vindicate him. His arrogance only strengthened the family's resolve. They would see justice done to the fullest extent possible. George channeled his experience into academics, focusing on bioethics, genetic modification, and the philosophical questions surrounding human enhancement. His teachers noted an unusual seriousness and maturity for his age. He told his parents he wanted to be part of the conversation about humanity's genetic future to ensure what happened to him never happened to anyone else. His trauma became his mission, his pain transforming into purpose and determination. Charlotte returned to art with renewed passion, but her work shifted, celebrating diversity, difference, and challenging conventional definitions of normal. Her school displayed her pieces in a gallery show. The response was overwhelming. People connected deeply with her message. Kate and William carefully vetted opportunities, allowing her voice to be heard widely while protecting her age and autonomy. Lewis remained the family's source of light, his innocence intact. His joy reminded everyone that even in darkness, happiness could still exist. Those moments of simple presence, laughter, play, quiet togetherness, became as important as therapy sessions. William and Catherine's marriage emerged stronger, built on surviving a test that could have broken weaker bonds. They learned to communicate honestly, never hiding fears or struggles. Their intimacy deepened, rooted in the knowledge that they had weathered what seemed unbearable. Old wounds still surfaced, but they faced them together. Public perception gradually shifted. Sensational headlines faded, replaced by respect for how the family handled the impossible. Polls showed growing support, seeing them as figures who transformed tragedy into advocacy. They never sought sympathy, but accepted it when offered, focusing instead on lives defined by choices, not circumstances imposed upon them. A year after the announcement, the family sat together in the living room. Ordinary to an outsider, extraordinary to them, they had survived. Their children thrived. Their family remained intact. The future was uncertain, full of questions without clear answers, but they faced it together, armed with love, patience, and hard-won wisdom. William looked at Kate, remembering that terrible day when her announcement sent him to tears that seemed endless. He reached for her hand, grateful beyond words for her courage, her strength, her presence through it all. She squeezed back, eyes reflecting love, gratitude, and determination to keep moving forward. Together, they had built a family fortified against storms no one else could understand. No matter what came next, their children laughed at something on television, the sound filling the room with normalcy they had fought to reclaim. This was their life now. Not perfect, not what they expected, but theirs, authentic, hard-earned, and precious. A family's private nightmare turned public reckoning, and they survived, stronger, closer, and wiser for it. If this story moved you as deeply as it moved us, please hit that like button, subscribe for more, share this video with friends, and comment below with your thoughts on resilience, family, and courage. Your support helps bring more untold stories from inside the palace walls.